Hi everyone, I'm Ryan Stanley, and just like you, I'm trying to navigate the world of dating in college. From asking a classmate to grab a cup of coffee to swiping through 50 matches a day on Tinder, we want to explore it all. My team and I are going to do a deep dive into the world of college dating on our podcast, Say It or Send It, as a part of Trojan Vision's production network. On this episode, we'll be looking at the topic of misconnections and how they might be the new form of college connections and dating, or how they might not be. We'll be looking at what they are, how they happen, my own experience trying out misconnections, and hearing from special guest Adam Novak and his misconnections app for USC students called Mist. Listen to Say It or Send It through Trojan Vision, Apple Podcasts, or whatever you get your podcasts. All right, sounds good. Well, I guess we'll get started and welcome everyone to the Say It or Send It podcast, in-depth view looking at kind of college dating and everything in between. We have our guest here, Adam Novak. If you want to introduce yourself a little bit, kind of talk about your background, maybe even give us a precursor into Mist a little bit, that'd be great.
For sure. Thanks for having me on the podcast, Ryan. So I'm Adam Novak. I am a student at USC. I study computer science and East Asian languages, and I am on the Mist team. And so Mist is an app just for USC students. It's anonymous posts, real connections. So it's about reaching out to someone you've crossed paths with, to either make their day or meet up with them in real life.
Yeah. So we're kind of curious about like the idea of misconnections in general. Maybe like a little bit how the idea kind of came to you for Mist specifically, just looking at that general concept, the idea of making this like anonymous post as a way for people to connect.
For sure. So if we start back and go all the way back to COVID times, I think that was when at least at USC, the Mist Connections Instagram account was first made and started to gain some popularity. And I was back home living in Tennessee. That's where I'm originally from Nashville. And it was hard to meet people, obviously, because of the lockdown. Yeah. So I, like many of my peers, tried out dating apps for the first time. And it was just not it. I felt myself, when you use that, you curate this incredible profile and you're going through all your matches and you're overthinking everything. You get in all these text chats and then nothing actually feels really meaningful because there's just too many options. And I feel like that's something that everyone can relate to, dating apps as they are right now. They're just really not a good way to meet people. Not everyone feels that way, but from conversations with a lot of people, that's the general consensus I've heard. At the same time, there was this, Instagram account at USC, the Mist Connections Instagram account. I first came across it last semester, and someone actually had written about me on the account. And so I had to maneuver my way around. I eventually found out who they were. We met up, and we formed a really nice friendship that still lasts to this day. We meet up with each other every once in a while. So to me, that was really special because I'd never really used, technology to meet up with someone in real life. And I was like, the fact that someone has to, take the effort to reach out first and they write something nice or uplifting or, whatever it may be about you or this interaction you guys had, just starts off the relationship on a good note. And so I was like, oh, this is super cool. I wanted to post a few more of these, whatever you want to call them, misconnections or, compliments, whatever, to other people on the Instagram account. And I tried to do that, but they were both, didn't end up getting posted. I don't know they weren't bad or anything. I guess they just weren't entertaining enough. So they kind of got left in the dust. And so I was like, dang, wouldn't it be great if I could actually share this stuff share these uplifting words to these people, meet up with someone in this kind of way. And also noticing that a lot of other colleges, they don't have a sort of platform for people to write anonymously about someone.
Yeah, this is a very USC centric thing, at least at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we were like, like this could be a really cool thing to turn into an app. It's like the general premise is just, it's pretty simple. It's like you reach out anonymously, and differently from all the other anonymous forum apps that there are, Reddit, you name it. The posts are about someone, and they all have the intention of connecting with them in real life.
So what would you say? I guess you talked a little bit about how you were kind of turned off from the online dating scene previously from all these other apps and the multitude of options about them. What like intrinsically kind of appealed to you about the idea of missed connections and like consequently missed as compared to those services?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think it was that there's a little bit, there's two sides of this. One is that it takes a little bit more effort on your part to actually connect with someone. So the only way you're really going to connect with someone is if you take a moment out of your day to write something about someone, particular moment in that you guys like met each other, interaction you guys had. And so that the fact that it requires you to like invest some effort, like you don't just swipe on them on a profile, like you actually took that effort, like that is special, and that means something when they see that message about them. Number two is that it's all based in off of real life connections. So the fact that you've actually seen them in person rather than just purely through the phone also makes it feel a little bit more like tangible and real. And then a third one I'll throw in there too is that most of the time these dating apps, they're all private. So you only see your matches, who's interested in you. But it's kind of cool to see relationships unfold around us too. I think that's one of the big values of these like little platforms is that it's fun to see like the budding romances, or even if they're not romances, like the messages sent out. So I think it's special to see other relationships.
Yeah,
too.
no, it's definitely interesting too. I've even like looked on the app and there's like ones like, oh, Adam for Mist, like yeah, like you're even popular on there yourself. So definitely interesting too. I was also curious, like, what do you think of the anonymity aspect of missed connections and Mist? Like, how does that play into the idea of like this relationship forming? Because obviously, right, you've seen these people, as you talked about, like you've kind of had a connection, but at the same time, there's still this anonymity aspect. And like, how does that play into the whole relationship building aspect of it as well?
Yeah, so at least with the approach that we've taken with Mist, it's that whenever you post a Mist, you're fully anonymous, so no one will know it's you. There's not even like a username or like an avatar attached to your Mist. It's just out in the open. And so you can share those words that you wouldn't have normally shared, right, in that way. And then when someone DMs you, their profile is immediately revealed. So if you ever DM someone on Mist, like after they've posted a Mist, you think, oh, maybe it's about me, or maybe I want to reach out to them, your profile is immediately revealed. Like they can see your actual profile picture, and that ensures that it nudges you closer towards knowing who each other are, so that you can meet each other in real life. Like rather it purely being entirely avatars. We actually. My friend Kevin and I, Kevin was also a co-founder for Mist, and we worked on it together this past summer. We went to Stanford for a few weeks and lived with some friends, and we did some interviews on like apps up there and what was popular, what was not popular. One thing that we heard people say about this Fizz app, that's like an anonymous forum app for Stanford. People were wishing that they could like reveal their profiles in the DMs. They were like, "Oh, it's cool that you can chat with, can post and chat and whatnot, but I want to somehow turn that into actually knowing who is on the other side." I think that's what is special about Mist.
Yeah. So would you say that's more of like the idea of, okay, you're taking that extra step into like committing to putting yourself out there necessarily in this space, as opposed to like you said, the dating apps are a lot more removed necessarily because you're actually making, okay, I have to make myself known to this person.
Right. Like you get the safety when you post and you share your thoughts, but we push people in the direction of that real life interaction in the DMs. And so we have other ideas too down the road for like when you're in the DMs with someone, and once you like revealed your profiles, like ways to nudge both of the people on the other ends of the phone to actually hang out with each other, because that's the goal, right? It's like, doesn't it's cool if someone writes about you, that's really awesome, but it's even cooler when you actually meet up with them.
Yeah. So it's like a contrast to say like more conventionally, like say you see someone and you actually go up to them and make that connection in person. How would you say like this is different in just terms of like not only like the social interaction, but how it might, help you or even just change the way relationships are being made in general on colleges' campuses, especially USC too?
Yeah. Like, how is it changing the way relationships
Are being formed.
Are being
Yeah,
formed?
definitely.
Yeah, there's the idea that people might have, like one concern, for example, people will bring up is that people would, but when you have these apps and platforms where you could just like reach out to someone instead of actually going up to them, that might push you away from actually approaching them in real life. And that is a fair concern. One thing I feel like that I've noticed is that I feel like that effect has already kind of taken place. Like, even if you didn't have an app like Myst, or you had like a platform for these misconnections, because we use apps like, Instagram or any other gaming app, you name it, those already push us in like the direction of like, oh, I'll just kind of stay to myself and pull out whatever like app I usually pull out at like the party or whatever it is, and just use that. And so, given that we're already at that unfortunate place where those people we don't approach someone as often as we'd like to, I think having just a way to do that through an app per se, sharing those words, reaching out is cool. And it also, I don't know, I guess one special part too is that it adds that communal part too, right? The fact that you can kind of see all of these love letters or myths unfolding. Like, you couldn't see all of those unfold around you if you only approach them in person. So there is a cool little dynamic that comes about with the
yeah, there's definitely that added benefit, and like I said too, there's like, it's entertaining also as like a spectator to see that, like especially too, even not only on Myst but on the Myst Connections page, like some of them are kind of outlandish or like eccentric too. So that's definitely like a fun part of the platform, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess what I'm curious about too is if, I guess it's not really strictly online dating. It's almost kind of an online platform to push people to make those real connections that maybe online dating necessarily isn't pushing people in that same direction.
For sure. One thing that we guess messed up with at Myst is, at first we thought that we could sort of like rebrand, or not rebrand, what is the right word, like reimagine what like dating apps could be like, and be like, oh, we're like a different kind of dating app, like we're one where you reach out to someone that you've seen in real life and with a kind message. But the problem is with that is that, like, Myst, in this kind of style of writing a Myst about someone, it really isn't a dating app, because a lot of the times when you write about someone in this kind of way, there isn't that romantic connotation beforehand, right? You might just like their style and want to compliment them on that, or you really found like the conversation in the hallway meaningful and you just wanted to thank them for that. Like those could lead into relationships, but when you add the romantic subtext from the start, then it kind of thwarts the whole the purpose of it. And so we think that we no longer call ourselves like a dating app, and it's really not a dating app. It's like a Myst Connections app. And I think that is sort of like, you could think of it as like a next iteration of dating apps in a way.
Yeah. So would you say Myst Connections are kind of becoming maybe like the new, or they could be becoming like the new form of dating necessarily? Because obviously like dating apps have these imperfections that we're talking about, and there's so many of them, but this can almost seem like a brand new way that's kind of, especially coming to college dating, or even just relationships in general and community building, is kind of
yeah, for sure. I think some people like dating apps, and if you look at the numbers, they are actually like doing well, it seems like across like the nation, like especially non-college students, like graduates of college and in their 20s and 30s are using dating apps more and more, and they find relationships through dating apps more and more. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we like love and are fully the biggest fans of how they work. And so I think that leaning into less of like just going on your home, going home and scrolling through Tinder, and more of like you live life, and if you saw someone or bumped into someone while you were doing your daily things, then you could somehow turn that into a connection.
Yeah, and so I guess how have you, like obviously you're a creator of Mist, and how have you kind of seen that played out on college campuses? Like how is the app being accepted? How are people kind of responding to this idea? Like looking at Mist, and then also to like we've been seeing Mist Connections grow. Like they just hit 10,000 followers on their Instagram page, and so it seems like this idea of Mist Connections is taking off more and more. And so how have you kind of seen that here at USC a little bit more? I know you've talked about your own personal experience, but
Yeah, it's we've gotten a lot of great feedback from our Mist community that really appreciates the app, especially for its more I guess uplifting tilt. Is that we have a feature in Mist called Prompts, which offers you several prompts each day to answer, to write about someone. And we try to shift it a little bit less in the direction, because sometimes Mist can be a little bit Mist Connections rather on the Instagram page. Some feedback we got from USC students was that it can feel a little bit like, I don't know, racy or pushy, and like uncomfortable from the girls' perspective. So we have tried to lean in a more just like the uplifting side of things, and people have said that they appreciate that about Mist. But yeah, I think that the overall growth of these kind of the style of connecting with people is indicative of a greater trend. There's like the Be Real trend of like moving from the curated Instagram feed to being real in the moment. And we like to think that this could be a similar trend away from like a Tinder and more towards a Mist. If you look at other colleges across the campus, across the country, a lot of them have these Mist Connections accounts sprouting up too. So we think it could be a larger trend.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm curious, like just maybe as like a deeper question, do you think it's like something, I guess like as people, do we want to have that more conventional style again, or is just the prevalence of like online dating and online connections, it's just become so much that people are like looking for something just like this, or the idea of Mist Connections?
That's a good question. Like where does it really come from?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't quite know. I reckon that second part you mentioned of people just wanting a more like I certainly resonated with Mist Connections as a concept more because of trying out dating apps and I'm not really working, and because you just want to like connect with people around you.
Yeah. So would you also think too, like obviously, right, you felt more comfortable potentially with this Mist Connections method. Do you think at least the idea of Mist Connections is more comfortable for people, or prioritizing their comfort as opposed to like dating apps or like Tinder or Instagram? Like it makes them feel safer, like especially with the anonymity aspect.
That's a great question, and one thing that we are still working with, because in some ways, yes, it does make you feel like, I guess, I don't know, maybe safer is not the right word. It might make you feel like it's certainly more meaningful, and you feel and be less empty after swiping through a bunch of like profiles. Instead of swiping through profiles, right, you like looking through all these messages people have written to each other, and it's like, oh, this is so like entertaining and cute. Like, let's see if one's about me or my friend, right? So from that end, it's a much better, I think, experience. I feel when I like use the app, but I will say that we have gotten some concern from some people about even if it's like, sure, it's anonymous. The fact that it's anonymous can lead to some problems, right? Of people posting bad content, or even perhaps like you get into like stalker like questions, right? Of like, what if someone is posting about someone in particular and keeps posting about them, or is saying things that are inappropriate? And we are thinking a lot about how we can like mitigate those issues at this point in time. But that is one downside of this thing, is that it could lead to that sort of like, I guess, like stalker direction too.
Sure, and I guess that's with anything, especially something where it's in like an online platform and there is those aspects of anonymity and also like the ability to, keep posting things or stuff like that. So that's definitely a consideration. So I guess like in the terms of like college dating altogether, how would you say misconnections just fits in? Just like at the end of the day, if we're looking at the whole, between conventional, seeing people at a party saying hello, or, to the whole, I only meet people on Tinder, I only want hookups, I guess altogether, how does that look?
Yeah, I think it's the kind of place where, I mean, as of now with the dating app scene, it's like you don't like go to a party and then the next morning you like, go on Tinder and you like hope to find that person. It's more of just like, you've got nothing to do, or you just like want to swipe through, and it could give you anyone in that great pool of people. So the entire USC pool. So with misconnections, it's like you are able to take some initiative and reach out to someone that you like directly, had an interaction with. So I think it'll, pull us closer to the people that are around us, and maybe that person that you would never have reached out to or said something about. Like I know for me it's less of like missed would like push me to like, and I wouldn't have said something to them, and now I might have said something, but now I like say it on Mist instead. I've noticed in my usage of Mist over the last like few months is that it's more of just like, I wouldn't have said anything in the first place. I had a thought that ran through my mind of like, oh, she like held the door open for me, or oh, this person was like had a super like great outfit on today, and I just would have had that thought and it would kind of flutter away. But now I have that thought and I think, oh, let me write a Mist about this moment, this mistable moment, if you will. I think it's just turning those little moments into, really like surfacing those so that everyone can see them.
All right, I like that a lot. Well, thank you so much, Adam, for being on Say It or Send It. We really appreciate your time here and talking about Mist and misconnections. So,
of course, thanks for having me, Ryan.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Of course. All right, I think that's a wrap.
So Ryan, I heard you decided to send in some misconnections for the week. What'd you do? How did it go?
I did make that decision. Looking back, I guess I went in a little gung-ho because it was very difficult actually to go about your day trying to find misconnections actually, because I feel like a little bit maybe of what Adam talked about was that I guess these things happen more naturally potentially, but actually going through my day, like looking for people and being like, ooh, are they a misconnection? Is this someone I can write in about or something? Felt very foreign to me. It's slightly uncomfortable. I wasn't exactly sure what I was supposed to be looking for either necessarily, because I don't know if I have that idea of the misconnection quite solidified in my head. I don't know. What do you think?
So did you feel like pressure when you were like the challenge? Was it more so in finding things to talk about, or was it more so in finding ways to phrase it?
I think a lot of it too was going throughout my day. I'm like, I have other things on my brain necessarily at other times of the day, so I'm not always looking out for people. But at the same time, it was also trying to think of, oh, what do I say to this person or about this person as well? Because at least for me, I would never want to make anyone feel uncomfortable either through that message as well. And then there's also the issue of the undercover aspect of it. It's like, am I leading this person astray in some manner? So there was definitely multiple dimensions to it being difficult for me personally, but maybe other people have different opinions on the process.
Was there anything that you liked in that process?
I think it was just there is a certain, I guess, excitement level to it, right? Because you are doing something unusual, or maybe even like somewhat adventurous or more daring than people would do necessarily sometimes, depending on how you're pursuing relationships with other people in general. Any other conversations that I don't know?
No, I feel like you kind of touched upon like the challenges and stuff. I want to hear like, is there anything that you learned in this process, either about yourself or about misconnections or about just like approaching life, dating, things like that?
That's a really good question. Anything that I learned? I think I definitely learned. I think this is just a general thing. Is confidence is key, 100%. At anything you're pursuing in life, especially when it comes to relationships too, is anytime you have doubt, it's gonna create some sort of feedback loop in your head, and you're not gonna feel as confident as about it as you would have gone into it before. I know there's like a common trick for making decisions is you count down to 5 and you just have to do it. And so I think when you go past that point where you keep letting it circle through your head, it's difficult. So maybe even though that I didn't necessarily go into it as much as I could have, I think that was the biggest takeaway I had, is that follow through is definitely going to be important, and looking for any relationship or even maintaining relationships as well. So I think that it was my biggest takeaway.
Nice, nice. Can we go back to what was your original goal?
Oh, yeah. I guess my original goal was just to figure out more so how you would do a misconnection, or necessarily how you would try to reach out to people through a misconnection, because at least looking at the concept of them initially, before things like USC misconnections or missed, these were kind of thoughts that were in your head, and they'd go out in and out of your head without ever, interacting with other people or being conveyed to other people. And so I guess it was just this extra step of something that maybe happens to us all at some time. So I wanted to see how that could be played out. And it would also have been really interesting had it worked out and we had someone here to talk about, the other side of the experience, not someone producing the misconnection, but actually receiving it and how they felt when they received it.
Yeah. So what is it that you imagine that you would have done this past week versus what actually happened?
Well, I imagine I probably would have sent out a few to people that I had seen potentially who looked interesting to me. And then hopefully they would have appeared on the page, and, we would have started a conversation. I'd be like, hey, this is actually part of a podcast. Would you like to come on and talk about how you felt about this whole experience? That would have been ideal. And in turn, what actually happened is that I felt very uncomfortable going throughout my day, trying to look for people to do that to specifically. And I think it's just difficult, especially if you're not used to that format. At least for me, that's how it was.
Did you have like a set quota?
Yeah, I did want to do at least 3 a day. That was the initial quota. That may have been too ambitious. Maybe that's why I got hung up with it in the first place. But I figured that might yield the best results, at least, because the submissions page is more picky, I think, with certain submissions, and so they get so many. So I wasn't sure what would be the best number to do, but that was what I had initially. But it is really hard to find 3 people that are, I guess, eye-catching enough to be like, I need to write a misconnection about them every day. So that was my plan going into it.
Did you come across anyone who you were like, oh, let me send a misconnection?
There was a few people who I considered. It was funny too, because there were some people who, there's people that you follow back and follow on Instagram who you've never really met, but they go to USC or something. So I'm like, oh, I actually saw this person the other day. I've never actually spoken to them, but I know them because I've seen them online before. So I was curious if oh, maybe I should do them or something, or reach out. So there was a few people, but I did not get around to doing it. So
I see. So did you kind of gravitate towards people you were almost like familiar with versus complete total strangers?
I think so, because there's just a level of comfort there that's slightly elevated above complete strangers, because at least there's some initial connection to some level, as opposed to absolutely nothing at all, which I guess can be a dual-edged sword as well, because when you don't know anyone, maybe it could be easier because there really isn't too much aftermath or consequences potentially if things don't go well or there's nothing happens at all.
Yeah. So how'd you feel about the fact that it would be anonymous then?
It just told you, it just felt weird and uncomfortable for me. I didn't know how I would feel about it initially. It was definitely something that I didn't think would be as hard as it actually was, but it was something as I went throughout my day. It's like, oh, this is weird. I don't like walking around and looking at people like that. It's like, I just need to get to my classes or go do what I was going to go do the next day.
Did you find yourself kind of, when you did find someone that you did want to write something about, when it came to sitting down and typing in a submission for the page, did you find yourself kind of putting in a lot of thought into it, or was it something more like just immediately what came to mind?
Yeah, so there was actually one, I'd gone to go get a boba with my roommates at Pot of Cha, and I saw someone who I had known through Instagram but not in real life, and I was like, oh, this would be really funny if I reached out to them and did it with like a really funny boba pun. So I spent like a good 10 to 15 minutes Googling like boba puns, but then again, I chickened out and I didn't do it. But I was like, this would be really funny if I did something along those lines. So there's definitely some thought going into it if I had sent them in.
Would you have sent it anyways if only that one person saw it and it wasn't in front of 10,000 people?
Actually, probably not. I probably would have been more likely to send it. I mean, you always say I didn't because that's how it would have worked. But I would have definitely been more comfortable sending it with more people seeing it, because I guess I feel like you're more held responsible potentially, as opposed to doing it one-on-one. It just seems a little bit more creepy, in my opinion, if I had to say how I would have felt doing it just like to a person conventionally like that. So.
All right. Would you recommend this experience for a friend or anyone else?
Yeah, sure. If you have the gumption to go and do that, 100%, because it can be funny. Like I said, looking at those boba puns was slightly entertaining, and if you can do it in a way that's funny and lighthearted and doesn't seem creepy or too racy or anything like that, I would say go for it, because it's definitely a unique USC experience to be scrolling through those misconnections each day and see what everyone's saying about other people they saw.
Yeah, for sure. And this is the last question I'm going to ask you, but what do you think is the role of misconnections then in the dating world from your personal experience now that you've learned all those things?
Sure. I guess in the dating world, it's just something that I think we all do unintentionally and maybe even sometimes intentionally. And till now, it hasn't been something that necessarily has been able to manifest itself out of something we'll say in passing to people or people we know. It's like, oh, I saw this like really pretty girl the other day, but I didn't say anything at all. That is being changed now by things like misconnections and Mist, where we have outlets for these things to be expressed. And so potentially it is facilitating connections that weren't happening before in a new and different way. So yeah, cool.
Yeah, awesome.
Today we are doing our roundtable segment where we're going to be talking about a few potentially controversial topics regarding online and conventional dating. We're joined here by our producer, Tori. So I want to just bounce this idea off of you, Tori. Online dating is unsafe and can promote creepy behavior with something like the anonymity of misconnections. What do you think about that?
Oof. So my personal thoughts are that I can see how that can be very true for some people. Because, okay, if you think about it, misconnections. Some stranger posts something about you, and they might include all these personal details about you, right? Your hair color, your eye color, your fit, where you were at a certain day, what class you're in, all these different things. And that can be some pretty personal information, especially if you get like multiple. I mean, I don't know what it's like to have like multiple misconnections about me, but you know, like if someone has like multiple misconnections that they send, that's a lot of like information about you out there. And like the thing with like misconnections is people usually tag the person in the comments, and especially if their profile's public, that's a lot of like, now suddenly any one of those like 10,000 followers can see everything about your page, and they know exactly that, like, oh, someone was eyeing them out, and they know like, oh, like they're in this class.
Yeah,
And
that class
sometimes-
thing too
yeah,
is, I didn't even
yeah.
think about that. It's like they can know where you are during the day as well. Yeah.
Because you can look all that information up online, and you can like, you know, I feel like, okay, this might be like reaching, but I feel like that is, I don't know, it can go into like stalker kind of territory.
Yeah, I think Adam talked about that a little bit, and that's
Yeah.
like an issue that they face. So that's definitely a concern with misconnections for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on to the next topic, meeting people in person allows you to get a better first impression and make more informed relationship decisions than something that starts online. Any thoughts there? I think it could go either way to a certain degree.
Yeah. I feel like it depends on so many things, like how authentic you show up online. And I mean, and also too, like sometimes it's not really a choice. Like there are some people I know who are like completely different people online than they are in person, and that's just like how they are.
Yeah.
And so I feel like for that, like meeting someone like that online, like, you know, you definitely probably would connect with them more in person. But wait, sorry, can you repeat the thing again?
Yeah, sure. Meeting people in person allows you to get a better first impression and make more informed relationship decisions than something that starts online.
I think that's a tough one because like,
So,
I feel
like, say you
body
meet someone in
language and
person
stuff. Yeah.
And you're like, oh, that'd be easier to be like, yes, first date, as
Mhm.
opposed to like someone posting a misconnection about you and then starting a conversation.
I get, okay, so I would say oh my gosh, is that weird if I like agree with that? Because
I mean, hey, it's your opinion.
okay, because like I personally, the person I'm dating right now, like we met online, so it's kind of hypocritical of me, you know, to you know, agree with that, but I do agree with that because
Okay, interesting.
I feel like there's so many like pieces of information that you pick up on without really realizing it, like subconscious kind of stuff.
Body
Yeah,
language.
like body language
Okay,
and stuff, and even
interesting.
just like general vibes, you know, like you can kind of like, sometimes it's like someone's vibe that you're like attracted to, or like you think is like interesting, and like that doesn't really translate as much online when you're meeting, like maybe it does like over FaceTime or Zoom, but I feel like especially like on dating profiles and stuff, it's totally up to the person who's curating it, and to like figure out how to, you know, what stuff to include, and a lot of times like it's not like the full picture, whereas like if you meet someone in person, you kind of get what they are filtering to be their first impression, but also you pick up on some other stuff that they're like, it's just like, you know, subconscious
Yeah, well, I think too,
communication.
like with conversations, right?
Yeah.
There's like tone too is like a big thing. It's like, oh
Exactly.
shoot, like did I say something like
Mhm.
in a text message or like a DM or anything? I think that's super up for grabs. Like there's no consistent
Yeah.
signal, especially right. There's people who have like a degree of digital literacy and people who don't.
Mhm.
So
Oh my god, no, yeah, it's really embarrassing. Sometimes I spend like an hour trying to figure out how to word certain text.
Yeah.
Because, like, you have to like
They're like
put
a
in
legal document, you know, it's like you
exactly.
can't, yeah.
Every word has to be very nuanced and stuff because like the stuff just like doesn't translate online as like as clearly. So like
Yeah. So I think that's definitely something that's like a concern
Yeah.
potentially. And I don't know. I guess that is controversial, especially since you met your current boyfriend online. So it's like,
yeah. But I guess that's why like you can see, like some of these misconnections, there is so much thought put into it, or at least it seems like it because they're very clever. And so like I don't know, I just feel like there's a lot more. I guess it could go either way, cuz the thought that goes into some online communications, like that in itself is very like you have to put in effort. And so like that effort is sometimes like, oh, this person, like, I can tell they put a lot of thought into it. So
do you think you could put that effort in person, like the same effort you might be putting in online in
Mm.
person?
That's true. That's a good point.
Like you can't just drop like
Yeah.
I feel like a cheesy pickup line that you see on Misconnections in person. I mean, you could. Maybe that would work. but
Okay,
who
so
kn-
like I have personally never used a pickup line or have been picked up lined on, but like I would have you ever?
No. Well, not legitimately. Like as maybe it's like a joke with like people
Yeah.
I'm close with, but I've never been like one is like if you're, the classic like hand over the shoulder. It's like if you were a pirate, would the
Aw.
parrot be on this shoulder or this shoulder?
Oh god.
Yeah.
I just wonder, like for people who like get picked up lined on, it doesn't feel authentic or like
That's a good question because I always feel like I see those videos too of people like going to college campuses and
Mhm.
being like trying those pickup lines or something like that too.
Yeah, but those are videos like for TikTok, right?
Yeah, or something.
Yeah. So like I feel like people like they can clearly see someone filming them. So
Mhm.
in those contexts, I feel like, oh, like if that were to happen to me, I'd be like, oh, it's for a video, ha ha ha.
Yeah.
But I wonder like how authentic it feels because I feel like that's kind of what we're touching upon. Like how authentic of a connection can you make on
Yeah.
like online dating and misconnections? But if you use like the same kind of tactics, or is that a weird word, tactics or techniques, strategies?
Techniques or tactics, war games, either or.
But if you use the same things, like in person, like
Would it work?
yeah.
That's a good question. That's an experiment that needs to be done potentially. So that, I guess that kind of brings us to our last topic here. Is like, can you really be original on Misconnections? And I guess that goes a little bit to like the same thing with like the authenticity of like
Yeah.
the in-person pickup line or like the misconnection.
Yeah. Huh. Okay, because I feel like there are different genres of things that people say on misconnections. I mean, I guess it depends too, like if someone is doing it for like a potential friendship or like a misfriendship or, like just saying like, oh, like so and so, you're so hot. Or if they're looking for like, oh, like I really love to get to know you better.
Yeah,
Let's
it's
go for
either 0 or
coffee."
100, right?
Yeah,
Or,
like there's definitely varying levels of like intentions
Yeah.
and like and like I don't know, intensities.
Yes, yeah.
So I feel like they kind of all they're super easy to like, I don't know. I feel like they're super easy to mimic.
Oh, for
Though.
sure. Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
almost I feel like I can kind of see how
There's a formula to it.
yeah, that's exactly the word that I was
Yeah,
going to use.
yeah.
Formulaic.
Pick someone,
uh-huh.
then like attribute and then,
Yeah.
intensity, whatever you want.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, call to action.
Yeah. Exactly.
Either like make a pun or like ask them out for coffee.
Yeah.
Or ask them for their app.
Yeah. Either or. Yeah.
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 So I feel like I guess that goes to, I mean, you and I were talking about this earlier, like the bigger question of like what it means to be original and creativity and all that, because I feel like Misconnections does kind of have like a structure.
Yeah. And if
To
it is
it,
its
yeah.
own thing,
Mm-hmm.
having a structure necessarily might not mean it's not original. It's just the way you're doing it, or it's like that is what a misconnection is inherently.
Yeah.
So
Because I'm sure to like, no matter what the message is, like if you get a misconnection about you, then like you're gonna feel special and
Yeah.
you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. You know, like it's not gonna really, like if you get just the fact that it's about you, I feel like doesn't really, I don't know, like I personally would not care like if it was just the most generic message ever.
sure, yeah, you get to
Because-
see your name
Yeah,
or whatever.
exactly.
It's like, that was me on the page. That was me.
Exactly.
It's like I don't know who was looking, but that was me.
Mhm. Exactly. And it's in front of all these people. So it's like, oh my gosh, look, like I've
Yeah.
noticed. And
So there is like a certain authenticity to it in that space. The only thing is, right, the anonymity aspect.
yeah, I guess it's just like, it's kind of like the same feeling of like a shout out, you know, like back in like the early days of Instagram, everyone was like, oh, shout out for shout out. Like, oh, I'm giving you a shout out and stuff. It's like the same kind of feeling. Like there's nothing original really about like any sort of, you know, shout out or anything.
Yeah.
But like the fact that someone, I don't know, was like exposing you to like, I don't know, there's just like something special about like
So I guess
put on
misconnections
a
does have that
platform.
like creative boundary to it
Mhm.
as well, but still it's all very, formulae. It's like send it in, hope it
Yeah.
gets posted.
Yeah, because I definitely think that with misconnections, there's kind of this inherent assumption that there's going to be an audience that's not just that one person. So you have to make it so that it's like digestible
Mhm.
for a broader.
Also too,
People.
like whoever's posting them, like
Yeah.
whatever, divine person is
Mhm.
choosing which which of
Mhm.
these gets posted on the page too.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you are curating for certain people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that like of the misconnections that are posted, or I mean even with Mist, I don't know if there's any sort of curation, but there is still that inherent kind of audience that is bigger than just that one person. And with social media, it's like you never know how big that audience might be. You don't know like who the audience is, and so there's this kind of like I don't know, like when you're even like creating the messages too, which I guess you can speak on because because of your experience.
Because I did make one, yes.
Yeah, but like there's something very different when you would like let's say that you don't do the misconnection, you just kind of like make your way around and get their contact information. That first text message, I bet, is a very different message than like something you would put for misconnections.
That's interesting to think about actually. Like say you were talking to someone, you
Yeah.
got your phone number, and then like
Mhm.
next day you see like the hey, do you want to do something Friday text?
Mm-hmm.
And how does that compare to the the blue text bubble being like
Yeah.
a person at the restaurant with the nice hair?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's definitely different, like when someone like uplifts you in like a public space. I feel like that's very, I mean, even with like relationships and dating like on social media and stuff, I feel like it's a whole thing, like the hard launch of a relationship on
launch.
social media. It's like a whole thing. It's like a meaningful space now, social media and stuff. So I feel like that's definitely like a part of it. Like how can I make it's like I don't know if it's like, if I want to call it a love language.
It's like a public declaration of love or something.
Yeah.
way.
So I guess in some ways like it does require like more bravery to do that in a public space versus just, DMing them.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess like one-on-one, that's a little bit, that is pretty brave too. So
Yeah. I guess it can depend on the person.
yeah,
Well, I think that's all the time we have for our roundtable
that is
discussion
true.
today. But thank you for listening to the Say It or Send It podcast.
Yeah.